Everyone, it's Raj from 3CB. Arsenal captain Martin Odegaard suffered an inversion ankle injury while on international duty, and up to this point we hadn't had an official update, but yesterday Arsenal manager Mikel Arteta gave us our first official word on the player. So up to this point, what we had heard is that Odegaard was undergoing scans and had gone to a specialist, which typically indicates that this could be a more complex rather than straightforward injury. Manager Mikel Arteta went into the fact that the player does have ligament damage, and he specifically said there's quite significant damage to one ligament in particular. So let's first go through what ligaments could be damaged. So this is a model of the foot. This is the lateral outer aspect. This is your fibula. Underneath it is the talus, kind of the dome of the ankle. This is your calcaneus or heel bone. So there's three major lateral ankle ligaments. First one is a ligament that runs from the fibula to the front of the talus, called your anterior talofibular ligament, ATFL, the most commonly injured lateral ankle ligament. Secondly, you have one that runs from the fibula down the calcaneus, called your calcaneofibular ligament. Thirdly, you have a ligament that runs from the fibula to the posterior of the talus, the back part of it, called your posterior talofibular ligament, or PTFL for short. When that ankle turns or inverts inwards, right, these gap and separate, which can stretch and damage ligaments, in severe cases rupture those ligaments. The one thing that Odegaard does seem to have avoided is a fracture. Oftentimes you can fracture the fibula, which can then lead to an extended timeline, typically 6 to 8 weeks out of the gate. There was no mention of that from manager Mikel Arteta, and further, the fact that Odegaard was pictured walking the day after without a boot on would further indicate that, because they would have likely already known about a fracture from an x-ray. With this type of injury, a lateral inversion ankle sprain, the first key determinant for return timeline is the severity of the injury. This sounds like it's at least a grade 2 moderate sprain, which can be 3 to 4 weeks, potentially more if there's multiple moderate ligament injuries. In the case of a grade 3 full rupture, you're looking at typically 4 to 6 weeks. If there's multiple of those, looking at 6+ weeks. Based on what Mikel said and how he specifically pointed to significant damage in one ligament, I'd venture to guess that there's one grade 3 full ligament rupture. So I would tend to go toward that 4 to 6 week timeline. That being said, you might be wondering, why is there such a significant range on these injuries? For example, the grade 2, the difference between 3 to 4 weeks is 33%. The difference between 4 to 6 weeks is almost a 50% increase in timeline. And that's because it comes down to multiple variables. The first key variable I already mentioned, right? The outright severity of the injury. Secondly, they're typically with foot and ankle injuries, with inversion lateral ankle sprains, you have two critical windows that will dictate and be the main driver of the timeline, whether it's delayed or expedited. First is initial recovery and treatment and how the player responds to that. And then secondly is the player's response to multi-directional movement, especially lateral movement, because that's when those lateral ankle ligaments come under the most demand. So those two key windows will tell you a lot about where the player is potentially heading. And then especially that last one with the multi-directional movement, you get a much better feel for the stability of the ankle. On the off chance, let's say you're in around that 5 or 6 week mark and you're still seeing signs of instability, that's when surgery can be indicated. Now, I want to make this point, emphasize it, because people tend to latch on to worst case scenarios. Ankle surgery on grade 3 ruptures is very much the outlier and not common. So I wouldn't expect that in this case. The last key variable is the fact that Odegaard's previous level of fitness is extremely, extremely high, and his commitment and dedication to what he does, which will include his rehab, will also be very, very high. I've personally found, completely anecdotally, that to be critical to quicker timelines, especially when it comes to having that previous high level of fitness, which then gives you more margin during rehab. It's for these reasons why, if you're seeing certain timelines, given out on social media, I take it with a massive grain of salt, because there is a lot of variance there, and these are variables that the physios won't even know until they're going through it, and we on the outside looking in certainly won't know. Time at which you see Odegaard return to the training pitch, even in individual training, will really give us much better insight into how he's responding in treatment and his true timeline. So keep an eye on that moving forward. In the meantime, it's as simple as next man up for mentality here for Arsenal. We already saw it during the NLD. You have to now adapt to being the captain being out and having to adjust the game plan as well. In better news, it does look like there's been good news on Calafiori, which will help the team. But in general, right, in elite football, everyone's dealing with injuries. There are no excuses. Now's the time for the coaching staff to find solutions and for the players to step up as well. I'll keep you updated on the injury as we learn more.